Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We were talking Project Ascension again today. Yet another video talking about a random enchant that I've actually theory crafted again, just like in my last video. And this time it's actually for tanks. Tanks is my main love in the game. It's the thing I like to do more than anything, even DPS. Even though I've made a lot of DPS build guides, tanking is my main gig. Now, Project Ascension tanking is a little bit stale. There's really only 3 archetypes. It's a shield, a parry, and a bear. And no matter how you build those, they all tend to feel pretty much exactly the same. So what I did is, after a while, I wanted to make a dual wield tank. Yes, a dual wield tank. This is something I've thought about in the past. I've kind of fiddled around with it before and didn't really get any like solid ideas until I really sat down and started fleshing it out. And I believe this idea for a dual wield tank could be extremely fun and maybe potentially a little bit broken, which is cool for tanking. We don't really get anything super overpowered in the tanking sphere in Project Ascension. If you guys like these videos and things like, remember to subscribe below, hit the like and the bell button down there as well. We go live every day on twitch.tv/Drydeck_TV every single day at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So without further ado, let's jump into the video. Let's go! Just like the last video, I'll pull a graphic of the Ari up here somewhere so we can go over this together, starting from the top. Fury of the Illidari. This requires single-minded fury, slam, Mortal Strike, and Overpower. Single-minded Fury is transformed into Fury of the Illidari. Slam is transformed into Crush the Meek. Mortal Strike is transformed into Arcing Slash. Overpower is transformed into Fell Infused Steel. Casting Crush the Meek procs your Enrage. While enraged, Arcing Slash strikes all enemies in front of the player, reducing the damage they deal by 20%. Fell Infused Steel increases your armor by 25%, stacking up to 5 times. Now, I didn't put a timer on the Fell Infused Steel because the original idea was to like use cooldowns at the start of the fight to kind of leverage some survival mechanics to get you to the point where you can stack up enough of these things to eventually get tanky enough to where you can survive without using them. Fury of the Illidari. Fury of the Illidari increases melee haste by 15% and reduces your global cooldowns by 20% of your melee haste rating. After using Crush the Meek, Arcing Slash, or Fell Infused Steel grants you increasing savagery, which reduces all damage taken by 30% for 2 seconds. While affected by increasing savagery, you gain maximum health equal to your attack power. So there's a lot going on in this one. So melee haste and melee haste rating is fairly available now, and I wanted to maybe leverage a different type of tank that doesn't rely on the traditional metrics of a tank, whether that's block, dodge, or parry. The other thing here, increasing savagery, reducing all damage taken by 30% for 2 seconds. My idea with this is to be able to get your global cooldowns down low enough with haste rating, and going over some things a little bit later, to eventually maybe have this up around 50%, maybe 60% uptime throughout the fight. So this is basically a 15% damage mitigation right off the bat. Now the other one, increasing your maximum health equal to your attack power. Now this I feel is wholly unique because I really don't get to see anything that directly increases your maximum health equal to your attack power. Now this would incentivize you to either stack strength or agility to get some attack power, but you may actually want to use like a Berserker's Call to get a bunch of attack power. And with certain procs and certain cooldowns, like my Hunter right now in about full Ascended Bis has like 5,600 attack power when you pop everything. Now I wouldn't expect like a tank who wants to also DPS or have DPS stats and a tank stat to have like 5,600. So maybe around 3,000 attack power is kind of where I roughly estimated at. So getting around, you know, an extra 3,000 maximum health while affected by increasing savagery, I don't think would be out of line at all. The second one, Crush the Meek. This is what your slam turns into. Crush the Meek deals chaos damage. After casting Crush the Meek, the next auto attack strikes the target 3 times. You gain a damage shield equal to 20% of the damage dealt by those 3 auto attacks, stacking up to 9 times, 18-second cooldown. Now this one is kind of your opener. You want to go in with a bunch of attack power, a bunch of things pop to do as much damage as you can on contact, and then you get like a damage shield to kind of mitigate some of the initial burst that you might get as the tank. So it's not 20% per strike, it's totaled up across those extra flurries of attack. So it takes 3 attacks and then you get a damage shield equal to 20% of that, but that stacks up to 9 times. Now I don't know if 9 times would be like insanely broken, because let's say you crit for like, I don't know, 7,500 damage. You know, 20% of that is like what, 1600 damage or something off the top of my head. So stacking that up to 9 times would be really, really hard. And I would imagine having like a timer on this would be a little bit better, but just because of how big the thing is, I couldn't really put more words into it. But I would imagine if you got like an 8,000 damage shield, that's not going to be really much more than like a power word shield in its current form, especially in ascended raids. So this one's really, really fun. Arcing Slash, this is what your Mortal Strike turns into. Arcing Slash is a 3-second channeled ability, striking with both weapons, dealing 120%, excuse me, weapon damage once every 1 second. Enemies hit by Arcing Slash has their attack and cast speed reduced by 5%, stacking up to 3 times. Each strike has a 5% chance to reset the cooldown of your Crush the Meek or Fell Infused Steel, 6-second cooldown. So the cooldown of the Arcing Slash is the same as Mortal Strike, so you're going to have this up a lot. And being able to reduce a cast and attack speed is really, really powerful, considering there's no effect right now that reduces it by 15. And if you have certain effects that slow or reduce armor that are the same value, they don't stack. But this one would stack. So you could use like Frost Armor, you could use other things like Thunderclap, which would reduce it by 20, and then this would stack on top of it, giving you a pretty potent slow on the boss. Now this is kind of like your real main ability here. The reason I wanted to have it kind of reset the cooldown is because in my head, what I want to kind of get across as flavor is you're using these abilities as often as they come up, but you need something to maybe reset the cooldown on Crush the Meek and Fell Infused Steel. Considering they're both 18-second cooldowns respectively, they wouldn't be up all the time, but giving this a 5% chance per hit would give you a total 15% chance. And if you're hitting one target, it's not going to be a crazy amount of uptime, but even just getting 1 or 2 increased reset on the cooldown would drastically increase the uptime of those other 2 abilities. The last one, Fell Infused Steel. Fell Infused Steel strikes with both weapons and applies Crippling Fear. Crippling Fear reduces the target's attack power by 10%. While this is on cooldown, auto attacks have a 2% chance to proc your Blood Craze, also has an 18-second cooldown. Now this is kind of where it ties in. This is where you're going to get your armor stacks, making you a little bit more tanky. The way I kind of balance this, I guess, is we have like a plate DPS in like full Bis Ascended gear, and he has about 10,000 armor. So if you have 25% global armor before any other modifiers just from the gear, you'd have around 22.5k armor, which is a little bit lower than like shield tanks and bear tanks, obviously, but then you add things like frost armor, demon armor, inner fire, other things, and you know, stone skin totem, you could realistically probably get 25, maybe even 26k armor, especially since this doesn't lock you out of having things like righteous fury, which would then increase it by another 10%. So this is kind of where your bread and butter survivability comes from. Now on this one, reducing attack power obviously is a bonus on bosses because there's not a lot of things that reduce attack power by a flat percentage. I think demoralizing shout and the things like that reduce it by a set value. So reducing it by a percentage is much more impactful. The other one, while this is on cooldown, auto attacks have a 2% chance to proc your Blood Craze. Now this kind of feeds into the fact that when you use Crush the Meek, it also procs your Enrage. And they've changed Enrage recently to where if you have the capstone bonus, the effects of Blood Craze are tripled, which can be a really, really powerful healing over time, considering you're probably going to be stacking stamina and strength on this. I wanted to give these tanks a little bit more identity. I didn't want to go just like, oh, more parry, more block, more dodge. That's boring, right? I didn't want to do that. MFB is a little bit different because you get raw mischance, but this one having a chance to proc your Blood Craze. So my idea was you want to be dual wielding, attacking really, really fast if possible, having a decent amount of survivability, but also a little bit of DPS stats to really increase the amount of survivability you get from like the Crush the Meek, but then having it proc your Blood Craze while in Rage could give you a pretty potent healing over time. And this is where the idea for this RE really came together, is the fact I wanted to attack tanking from a completely different dynamic. Right now, it's just like, get as much avoidance as you can, stack armor and HP. Pretty boring. So I really wanted to give tanks a new way of playing. Now, I don't know if this would even work because losing dodge, block, and parry is a pretty massive survivability nerf to your tanks. But I think with proper setup, proper management of cooldowns and certain raid compositions, I would imagine a, self-shielding, healing from Fell Infused Steel, and then stacking this armor a lot, and then giving like you know, 20% damage mitigation along with more slows, I think might push this up into the level of viability. And I think it would be really, really cool. I just want to see tanking be a little bit more unique. And Project Ascension is obviously the perfect fertile ground for like organically growing a new tank style. Tanks are just more mitigation, more HP, more armor. So I wanted to kind of attack tanking from a different angle, and I wanted to see what you guys thought about it as well. But that's about it for the video. Let me know what you guys think about this RE down in the comments below. I think this is pretty wholly unique. I think a dual wield tank has been something that many high-end tank players have been asking for in Project Ascension, and we have all the tools for it. I know it's probably hard to code, hard to, you know, get all the back end stuff done, but the design I think is very, very solid. Obviously numbers can be tweaked around if it ends up getting absolutely out of hand, but I tried to keep it like relatively modest. The first incarnation of this thing was insanely overpowered. Like, I really took it down. I really tried to attack these things to where it could be just taken at face value and maybe implemented in the game with a few little tweaks. And I think it would open a brand new archetype of tanking. You know, you're going to be DPS, you're going to be adding to the group. You're not going to be doing like 10k DPS, but let's say your tank does 5k, 6k in a mythic and even ascended raids, especially for like realm first raiders. Every little bit of DPS counts. And I think having an archetype that is going to kind of fill two roles, maybe like 0.25 of a DPS, but 0.75 of a tank, I think would be really, really fun. And I would imagine a lot of players out there would like some more flavor in the tanking sphere. Without further rambling, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Remember to subscribe below for more content. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!